At Dartmouth College, the Ivy League university in New Hampshire, a group of student climate activists called Fossil Free Dartmouth has just published a report entitled Investigating Irving. The report takes issue with the Arthur Irving Institute for Energy and Society, a new facility named after the owner of Irving Oil, which operates Canada's largest refinery right here in New Brunswick. The report raises questions about greenwashing and the potential undermining of academic credibility. Dartmouth College established the institute with money from Irving Oil, Arthur Irving, his wife Sandra Irving, their daughter Sarah Irving, and the Arthur Irving Family Foundation. The report from Fossil Free Dartmouth states that 1/3 of the institute's advisory board works with the fossil fuel industry, either directly or indirectly. Its members include Sandra Irving, Sarah Irving, and the Irving Oil president Ian Whitcomb, and ExxonMobil global brand manager Abigail Rodgers. The report calls for Irving Oil and ExxonMobil reps to be removed from the board. It also calls for the institute to be renamed and for the college to implement a policy rejecting funds from fossil fuel companies, among other demands. Well, for more on this, I'm speaking to Aaron Stoiter, professor of sociology, specializing in critical media studies at Mount Allison University. Thanks for joining the NB Media Co-op today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Professor Stoiter, you're noted as a critic of the Irving family's political and economic power. Do you see the Arthur Irving Institute for Energy and Society as an example of greenwashing?
Yeah, I certainly do. I see the way that this donation to make them part of academia and to be funding research and cultivate student engagement, while also having a very overt agenda for pursuing, sort of profits through the oil industry, is very much intended to try to bring more people into their story and for them to be able to create a positive image and to kind of wrap themselves in a mantle of research and evidence and sort of the future of young students and sort of energy leadership to mask kind of the pretty dirty oil story that is where the wealth comes from.
Speaking of wealth, company owner Arthur Irving has a net worth currently estimated at $5.8 billion, according to Forbes magazine. His brother James K. Irving, who owns the conglomerate known as JDI, which includes trucking, forestry, shipbuilding, frozen foods, and other business sectors, has a net worth estimated at $5.4 billion. That puts them among the richest people in the world. The Irvings, of course, are also known for their philanthropy here in New Brunswick. It's commonplace to see the Irving name associated with their donations. Examples include the Irving Ambulatory Care Center at the Moncton Hospital, sponsored by Robert Irving, another member of the Irving family dynasty. St. Thomas University in Fredericton recently announced new scholarships funded by Irving Oil and the Arthur Irving Family Foundation. The list really goes on. What's the role of this kind of philanthropy in society, in your view?
Well, it's certainly a benefit. Obviously, these are good things to have money coming from wealthy, organizations in areas of need, and you definitely don't want to say, we don't want your money, but they use this intentionally in order to kind of create a positive association with them, and then to kind of marginalize criticisms of them, to sort of undermine movements like that would question or have inquiries about the nature of the industries that they're in, the amount of wealth that they're able to accumulate without perhaps paying their due taxes, the sort of long-term lifetime consequences of the industries that they're in for people's health or for the environment. If the story then becomes about the very nice thing that they donated to, if though a fair taxation system could have easily paid for all of those things and many more. And if they also didn't have a monopoly on the sector, there would be dozens more entrepreneurs who would be in the sector who would also be able to contribute to philanthropy. But they are very against having competitors flourish in any of their fields of dominance. And so they then get to be the one who's the only one with the amount of wealth to create the largesse. And it is very distracting. It's hard to raise a critique about them when other people will say, well, but look at all the nice things they did. Well, yes, they did do those nice things, but that doesn't mitigate the harm that they've done. it is certainly beneficial to them to, kind of want to put this good news story out. And many philanthropic organizations will actually spend more on promoting all the good things they do than maybe even actually spending money on good things. It's very important to them to have a brand with a positive identification, as opposed to one maybe connected to the truer cost of what their company's doing.
We have reached out to Irving Oil for comment, but they haven't responded at the time of this interview. The NB Media Co-op also reached out to Dartmouth College, which provided a statement. It said in part that Dartmouth faculty have independence in any research related to the institute as stipulated by the founding gift agreement. The report from Fossil Free Dartmouth acknowledges that Dartmouth faculty largely said they have full independence in their Irving funded research. However, the report calls sponsorship bias a risk the university must take into account. Do you see sponsorship bias of this kind as a risk for universities?
Yes, I certainly do. And there have been many policies that have been developed over time to try to address this. There can be quite a significant damper on freedom of research and freedom of expression if the donor, like, basically, has a large presence either through direct approving of things, but also there's a general culture in which you sort of know what kinds of projects are going to be funded and what kinds of projects would be frowned upon, and that you wouldn't expect to get a renewal of your grant or something like that. And so you end up getting a lot of like happy news or distracting or research that doesn't address fundamental questions when you have researchers who are dependent on their financial support for their research projects, basically, in a gatekeeping type role. And people don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. That's a very natural dynamic that takes place. And there's been several terrible stories of, inappropriate influence by donors in these types of situations. And so we have, there've been cases where pharmaceutical, testing has gone on past the point that the researcher felt was safe because they were under so much pressure from the pharmaceutical company to not reveal that actually this drug wasn't working, let alone causing harm. So we do have a lot of good models of policies in place to try to create a sort of a wall between a donor and between the research. But it sounds like from the inside stories at Dartmouth that this is not the perception and reality.
In the context of the global climate crisis, what's the significance of this kind of bankrolling of an energy institute at an elite academic institution?
I think the students are really recognizing that this is a situation that cannot carry on. We have had so much enabling of the sort of petro industries and so much delay and denial that we've lost decades of our ability to roll back and remediate the situation. And we are really like coming to a point of no return that the young people have really understood and taken the mantle on. And this type of continuing to put a happy face on an industry that needs to stop in its track and pivot away to a different type of energy system. This is all causing like harm that we may never recover from. The situation is urgent, and the young people are recognizing that. But unfortunately, the funders and their allies do not.
Anything else to add about this story?
Well, there's a lot of facilitation of donors of this level within universities and research institutes and think tanks, and their money gives them a lot of opportunities to kind of set agendas, set curriculum, set research agendas, set the tone, set the standards of leadership. And it's not without consequence. They're doing it for a reason, and the students are protesting it for a reason. And I think we should pay close attention to what the students inside the institution are saying.
Well, thank you, Erin Stoiter, Professor of Sociology at Mount Allison University, for speaking to us today. I'm David Gordon Koch. Thanks for tuning in to the NB Media Co-op.